Now, let's finally get on to actually structuring your story. To make this easy, I've split it into beginning, middle, and end, and I'll elaborate on what you should try and put in at each of these benchmarks. The beginning of your story is where you start telling your audience about the setting and the characters. This is called exposition. At this point is a great time to start describing what they're like. Physical features, mannerisms, how everything looks, trying to get your mental image across to the reader. The beginning of your short story is also the time where you want to create your inciting incident or call to arms. By this I mean you need to create a problem for your character to solve or establish a goal, something that they want to do, something that's going to drive the plot forward and spur your character to act. Next, in the middle part of your story, your character is striving to achieve their goal or working hard to solve the problem that they've been presented with. This is called rising action. At this point, you want to show your reader what's stopping your character from achieving their goal or solving the problem. This is a great part to start developing character by showing that your character has a flawed way of thinking, that they have room to grow. At the middle of your story as well, you need to show that your characters can't turn back, that they need to put everything they have into achieving their goals, otherwise they might lose everything. One thing that the best stories always have are stakes, and I'm not talking about the food. By stakes, I mean your character needs to have something to lose. They need a reason for going on, something that will help them push through their journey, which therefore helps the plot progress and their characters develop. They need a reason for going on, a purpose or an incentive. Finally, for the ending. At the ending, your characters need to face the final obstacle that is in the way of their goals. This is called the climax. This is where those high stakes come into play. Your character needs to put everything on the line in order to achieve their goal. You need your reader to be unsure of whether they're going to do it or not, to create that tension that keeps them reading onwards. After this comes the falling action. The falling action is where your characters deal with the consequences of the climax. Did your characters win or lose in the climax? If they won, is the victory and the goal everything that they had hoped it would be? And if they lost, how does it feel? How does it affect them to not have achieved everything they've been building towards? And remember, your characters don't always need to succeed in their endeavors. While it's nice to have an underdog story or a hero story, sometimes it's more relevant and it's more appropriate for your characters to lose. Lastly comes the resolution. This is where you tie all of these devices together, like theme, plot, and character. One of the most important things for your character arcs is that your characters have changed. Your characters need to have a shift in perspective, something that they wouldn't have realized unless they went on this journey. Much like people do in real life, your characters need to grow and change and adapt based on the environment that they've been presented with. It's really important that through your story, your characters are challenged and they need to evolve throughout the course of it. Now that I've given you the blueprint to create your own short story, I'll outline a little story that I came up with based on the onlooker concept that I showed you in the last lesson. So my story starts when Laura, a young girl, is hiking through the forest with her father. At first she ignores his warnings that the forest can be dangerous and unpredictable and ends up losing her father in the forest. When she's lost and alone, she comes across a friendly onlooker who brings her berries and mushrooms to eat. She brazenly pushes through the dark forest, unknowingly getting herself even more lost. At this point, she's unaware that a lonely wolf is tracking and hunting her. Realizing now that she's gotten herself even more lost, She listens to the onlooker and allows it to take her towards her home. Eventually, she can see her home, but it's over a rickety olden bridge. Rather than being overly confident and doing it on her own, she allows the onlooker to lead her across the bridge safely. That's exactly when the wolf leaps out of the forest and begins chasing down the girl. The onlooker then sacrifices himself as she jumps to safety, just barely making it across the bridge before it collapses. She runs back home and goes into her father's open arms. She humbly promises to never run away in the forest again and make sure that she's always careful around him. She goes on to craft a small figure of the onlooker which she keeps by her at all times. Laura realizes that the forest can indeed be really dangerous and that she should heed the warnings of her father. Now, see if you can identify all of the plot points that I spoke about in my short story. And I have just taken you through a classic narrative arc that you can see in tons of stories, but don't be afraid to mix things up. Some of the best stories come from unorthodox and unique narrative layouts. So now that you've written your short story and you've finished a first draft, let's run through some editing techniques. Remember, your first draft doesn't have to be a work of art by any means. It's purely so that you can get the creative juices flowing, just get your thoughts out onto a paper, and draft by draft you can start to refine it and cut it down from coal into diamond. When you're reading through your drafts and you're editing them, try to only look for one particular thing each time. So on the first pass, just look for grammatical and spelling errors. And then once you've done that, read through it again and look at sentences that could be shortened or made more efficient. Each time you rewrite your story, it's gonna become better and better. And remember, it never hurts to have a spare pair of eyes. So get your friends and family to have a read through of your story and they can let you know what they think. There might be points where your friends and family find it was a bit harder to read than others. Take on their advice and their emotions and how they felt during reading and use that to craft it into the best narrative that it can be. And remember, don't give up, stick with it. Your drafts will get better and better even if you don't realize it. When you're describing something in your story, it's really important that you show things and don't explicitly tell them. What I mean by this is allow your reader to figure things out for themselves. Give them a bit of credit. So instead of saying that John was angry, for example, you might say John clenched his fists really tightly. Don't forget to employ the use of those literary techniques like metaphors, similes, onomatopoeia, juxtaposition, and so many other types. So now you've got the blueprints to create your own short story and hopefully some tips and tricks that will help you feel a little bit more confident when it actually comes to writing it up. I really look forward to reading all of your creative writing submissions and I wish you the best of luck. I'll see you in the next creative writing workshop.